Live.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome. Calling to order the Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce for our 2 p.m. agenda in our first virtual hearing. My thanks to those members who are here in the audience as well, or in the room with us, as well as Representatives Hara and Matsumoto, who are also joining us virtually. I did want to just start off really quickly with thanking our members. We have important tasks ahead of us. This committee touches everyone who is a consumer and involved in commerce, and I think that should be very sobering to us as we begin our tasks ahead. And you can see from today's agendas and the many agendas to come that our purview is broad. And so our responsibility is to protect our consumers and also ensure that we're enabling commerce. With that, for those watching, I did also want to start off with a few ground rules. It's my request as well as my expectation that we will all show each other aloha. I think that makes us special and different from so many places in the mainland that are struggling right now with how to have robust political discourse in a respectful manner. Also, a few notes from the committee. In order to allow as many people to testify as possible, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier, and I'll be calling on those testifiers who indicated they will be testifying in this Zoom hearing. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. What we will be doing is we will be taking up each bill in order, and we will also, for those waiting in the Zoom, in case members have questions of you, we'll be doing question and answer after each bill. Please, the Zoom chat function will also allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use that chat only for technical issues if you're experiencing issues in testifying. If you're disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note that the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. I did also want to note for those joining us in the hearing from the public, we have been having general technical issues today. So the automatic response mechanism confirming testimony was received may not be working, but it doesn't necessarily mean we haven't gotten your testimony. Please refrain, obviously, from profanity or uncivil behavior. Again, we should be showing each other aloha, and such behavior that is not commensurate with that is grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin. With that, I think that completes our general parameters for how we'll conduct our proceedings today and in every other subsequent hearing. First off on today's agenda, we'll be tackling HB 891, which is relating to electric guns. This would establish a regulatory framework for electric guns and electric projectile guns, similar to firearms, in light of the fact that our present ban on such items is likely unconstitutional based on a recent Supreme Court decision. We have our first testifier who is awaiting in Zoom. We have Amy Murakami, Deputy Attorney General from the Attorney General's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson and members of the committee. I am Deputy Attorney General Amy Murakami, and the Department of the Attorney General strongly supports this bill. The purpose of this bill is to protect the health and safety of the public by regulating the sale and use of electric guns. And as Chair Johansson mentioned, Supreme Court case of Cayetano versus Massachusetts drew into question the constitutionality of Hawaii's electric gun ban. And there is a pending lawsuit in the federal district court challenging Hawaii's electric gun ban. This bill would repeal the electric gun ban, and create a regulatory scheme which requires a permit to purchase and registration of purchased projectile electric guns, commonly known as tasers, and would also require sellers of other electric guns, commonly known as stun guns, to be licensed and to keep records of their inventory. It also limits the use of electric guns to adults over the age of 21 and creates criminal offenses for the use or possession of an electric gun in the commission of misdemeanor or felony offenses. The department respectfully requests that the committee pass this bill, and I appreciate the opportunity to testify before the committee, and we'll take any questions that the committee does have. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Attorney General Murakami. Next, we have Mark Tom with the Deputy Prosecuting Attorney of Honolulu in support. I guess Mark is not with us in Zoom. Honolulu Prosecuting Attorney's Office is in support. Next, we have, let's see, David Nilsson from the Honolulu Police Department in opposition.
Yes. David Nilsson for the Honolulu Police Department. Yes, good afternoon, Chair. David Nilsson for the Honolulu Police Department. I am the Major Commanding of the Records and Identification Division, and we're responsible for firearms permitting and registration, which this bill would fall under. The Honolulu Police Department opposes House Bill 891 relating to electric guns, and our opposition is to the process of permitting and registering electric guns. 2020 saw a record number of firearms permitted in Honolulu and over 30,000 firearms registered. And our firearms permitting and registration system is under severe stress. Adding tasers to that process, as this bill proposes to do, it mirrors the process to obtain an electric gun, electrical projectile gun, and to register an electric gun or a stun gun to that of firearms. Will overwhelm our system and possibly collapse our ability to process firearms and electric guns. The HPD is unable to support these requirements while continuing to handle record levels of firearm permit requests and registrations.
Thank you. Next, we have Todd Yukutake from the Hawaii Firearms Coalition in opposition.
Good afternoon. My name is Todd Yukutake. I'm with the Hawaii Firearms Coalition, and we oppose HB 891 and request amendments. So of the opposition, actually, we agree with HPD as far as permitting and registration. There's a 90-day, or actually over 90-day wait for permitting and registration appointments. We do support the unbanning of the electric guns. We believe it's a constitutional right. But what we mostly oppose, is all of the restrictions listed in the bill. This is a 53-page bill. Very, very long, very detailed. Basically, it treats the electric gun like a firearm as far as registration, permitting, wrap back, age limits, just about everything. Now, there is a long list of these requirements, and if this passes, we would be the strictest, probably the strictest state in the nation as far as regulations to purchase and own a electric gun. In my testimony, I have some charts, all of the different requirements for each state. Almost all states have no restrictions at all. Some have you have to check ID, or you have to be at least 19 years of age. But there's only about really 3 states with anything that approaches to what Hawaii is proposing. Even California and New York do not have restrictions on buying electric guns, and they are the harshest ones as far as firearm laws go. To prove this point, in my testimony, you can actually buy a taser from Amazon, has free shipping, shipped straight to your door. That's it in most states. Just buy it off of Amazon or buy it over the counter in most stores on the mainland. So there's nothing really special about electric guns and tasers to warrant these restrictions. Now, some of you may say it's unsafe, they're deadly, and they can cause complications, but I have a picture here that's also in my testimony. I was an HPD officer before. My entire HPD class got tased at the academy. Basically, we get shot with a taser, we fall down, we get back up after 5 seconds, and that's it. We're back to normal. So no one died, no one got injured. So they can be safe. See, lastly, we would like you to amend this bill, basically strip out all of the restrictions and regulations in it and go with the wording in Senate Bill 462, which is a clean repeal of Hawaii's electric gun ban. Basically, it just crosses out all of the current bans and restrictions on it, and then we can go to the store and purchase it. I do have a lot of complaints from stores too. They said that they basically have to track it like a firearm, store records for 10 years. There's a requirement to have employees take electric gun training every 3 years, which is going to be costly because I don't think that's even offered in Hawaii. They have to travel to the mainland to take that. So I don't expect any stores to actually sell it in Hawaii. So this is still kind of a de facto ban on electric guns because of the restrictions. So that's why we are opposed to this bill, but we support the unbanning of it without restrictions as in SB 462. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I believe we have Marcus Tanaka in opposition.
Hello. I just wanted to add to my testimony that this is what, if you want to regulate the tasers, like Major Nielsen stated, HPD will be overwhelmed. The system will crash. You guys are going to also have to allocate more funds to that department. I've been trying to buy a pistol since August and haven't been able to get an appointment because they're not doing walk-ins anymore. It's only on the website RSVP. My wife has been trying to add her name to a pistol I already own and we live together, but she's unable to do so since October because we can't get an appointment. When this meeting started at 2:05, I just went on to their website. This is what they're showing. So for at least the next 90 days, there's no appointment. I don't know if you can see that here. 90 days, no appointment to acquire a firearm, a handgun. So add in HP not only having to do handguns, firearms, but as well as tasers. You know, how long is it going to be before anyone can even buy a taser if you regulate it just as much? So like Todd mentioned, it's more of a de facto ban where I should be able to order on Amazon. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I should be able to order on Amazon, no problem. You know, a female who has a stalker shouldn't have to wait 6 months to get a taser to protect herself. She should be able to walk into a store that sells them or go on Amazon with 2-day prime shipping and get it delivered to her door. So that's what I wanted to add that I didn't put in my testimony is, you know, the website says 3 months. I know a lot of people have been trying 6 months, even longer to get a firearms appointment because the department was reservation only and not walk-ins. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we also have Dan Gu in opposition.
Hi, my name is Dan Gu, and my wife is sitting here. She submitted testimony, but we only have one computer, so she's here with me. I'm a former detective in the Honolulu Police Department, and I'm currently a U.S. Marshal as a contractor. I've been in law enforcement for 35 years. And first of all, I want to thank you for having this Zoom meeting because it allows us to be able to testify without having to fight for parking downstairs and wasting a half a day just to testify. So thank you very much. So I've been in law enforcement for 35 years, and the reason why I oppose this bill is because what the others have said is that you're making the requirements to purchase a taser just like a firearm. And right now that I can't even, I have a residence on the mainland, and I purchased a firearm. I brought it back and I can't even register it. The law says we need to register the firearm within 5 days of bringing the firearm into Hawaii, and I can't even register it because the registration system at HPD is so long and so backed up. So I'm against this bill because of the things you have to go through to purchase it. I think people are just going to purchase a firearm instead rather than purchase a taser, because at firearm you have more capability of defending yourself against multiple assailants. And if you're going to have to go through the same things to get a taser, you might as well just get a firearm. So I'm happy that you're allowing and you want to ban the current ban on tasers, because in Hawaii we need more options to be able to protect ourselves on the streets, at home, in the stores. My son, I tell people that the police department cannot protect you.
Dan, if you can start to
Okay,
sound-
one last thing. I tell people the police can't protect you. My son called an emergency call to the police department dispatch 2 days ago. It took 5 minutes and 20 seconds for the operator just to answer the call. So if you sometimes you can't even use the phone. So I'm glad you're trying to unban the taser, but change the language so that it's easier to obtain than what you have here. And my wife had submitted testimony.
I'm
that she
actually going to
wanted
call her next.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Judy Gu, also in opposition. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. I am also opposed and request the committee not pass the bill. I believe that it is overreaching and very restrictive, and I'm also very concerned. You know, I believe that we should be allowed to purchase and protect ourselves when we're in vulnerable situations, and we should be able to do it safely. I believe that the electric gun and taser is a great option that is allowed to us legally. And I don't wish to carry a firearm with me, but I would absolutely carry an electric gun to protect myself. I bring an instance that's very close to me and very important that was on the news January 4th, 2020, when a 38-year-old homeless young man entered the Interstate building on South King Street, confronted a woman in the elevator, proceeded to rape 2 women in the elevator in broad daylight. He was arrested eventually. He was a known suspect, and yet it did not stop the rape, and it could not stop the rape. However, if a woman was in the elevator with some safety means of protecting herself, I believe it would have been a deterrent. I am in that elevator at least once a month for the last 20 years, and I'd never been so frightened except in January 2020. So I would like to ask, I understand the circumstances, but I don't believe that the overreaching bill that's currently being proposed is appropriate. And I would like the opportunity to be able to protect myself in vulnerable situations, especially in elevators in downtown and in Honolulu areas. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mrs. Gu. Next, we also have individual testimony from Michael Rice in opposition.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. I apologize. I do not have a web camera currently. Basically, everyone else has already gone over pretty much what I wanted to say. I will add, however, that the age limit would also be an issue, especially for younger women, because I mean, going off to college and whatnot, there are problems like that on campuses. And I'd also like to reinforce the fact that this would essentially still be a de facto ban for the training requirement, since, as to my knowledge, this training is not available on island with the exception of to law enforcement. So as Todd said, you'd have to go to the mainland to get training in order to buy a taser. So everyone I've asked their opinion on this topic so far, when given a choice between a taser and a gun to defend yourself, and there's equal restrictions, and I would argue there's actually greater restrictions for the taser, everyone has always said, I'd rather just have a gun. I apologize. I had something prepared, but it kind of got sidetracked. I'd like to use the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Members, please note that we have other testimony proffered in support and numerous individual testimonies proffered in opposition, but indicating that they will not be here to testify on this measure, HB 891, for those watching. Seeing no further testifiers present, members, any questions on HB 891? Vice Chair Kitagawa.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions for Todd Yukutake from the Hawaii Firearms Coalition. Hi, Todd. Are you still on?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay, great. I'm not very familiar with electric guns and firearms, so I'm trying to learn a little bit more and understand more. But currently, right, this bill, electric guns are illegal under this current bill, which is why we're trying to legalize it through this process.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just thinking, wouldn't it be better to have this bill than not have the option to even buy tasers? Because right now in Hawaii, people don't even have the option to buy any type of electric gun, even though you've mentioned Amazon and those things. That's for other states, correct?
Yes, they don't ship it to Hawaii because of our current ban.
Okay, and then I read the testimony and kind of see ideas, but from your opinion, being with the Hawaii Firearms Coalition, what are the main reasons that, I guess, make someone want to purchase an electric gun?
Well, for self-defense, just like Judy Gu mentioned, some people don't like firearms for whatever reasons, and electric guns would be an alternative for them.
Okay.
And of course, there's pepper spray, but pepper spray doesn't always work. So tasers are another option for them, and they may not go through all of this hassle. Even myself, when I go to buy a firearm, gotta go through background checks, waiting periods, permitting, registration lines, all that. No one's gonna go through that to buy an electric gun, and much less stores to sell it.
And then I just have just another question. Is it with electric guns, is there a possibility that electric guns can be made or altered to become lethal? Because I'm guessing there's a certain charge that's associated with an electric gun. Are there variations in the amount of charge? Is it a standard where it's never, because you mentioned in your testimony that through HPD training, you've been tased and it didn't affect you, but is there a way that they can be altered so that the charge is increased?
That question I do not know. We'd have to find out from Taser, but I don't believe so. I mean,
So
I would imagine
so
it take a lot of
mainly
expertise and engineering skill to do something like that. I'm not even
So
sure.
are all electric guns, when they're sold, a standard level of charge? Like it's just a standard?
Yeah, there's all different models and makers.
But they all have the same charge?
Probably more or less, but I'm not an expert in that area.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Kong?
Thank you, Chair. For the Attorney General's office, my question is, if this bill is if we pass this bill, would regular citizens be allowed to carry this in public in the future? Would it be like a concealed carry, or how would we address this?
Thank you, Representative Kong. Currently, the bill does not address concealed carry or open carry, so there is no current limitation on how the electric gun would be carried.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Members, any other questions on
Chair.
H891? Oh, Representative Har?
Thank you. Ms. Murakami from the Attorney General's office. Ms. Murakami, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I do understand that this is a committee on CPC, but I'm just unfamiliar with the Cayetano, Massachusetts case. Could you just please summarize very quickly? I think there's some confusion as to the impetus of this bill. And from my understanding, it seems it's because of the Supreme Court's ruling in the Cayetano versus Massachusetts case, and then this deck action in Roberts v. Ballard. So could you just please summarize very quickly what Cayetano versus Massachusetts, what the holding was, and what the deck action in Roberts v. Ballard is?
Well, okay, so in Cayetano versus Massachusetts, there wasn't an actual outright holding because the law in question had been amended, but there was indications in that holding in the court's opinion that clearly indicated that any outright complete ban would not survive constitutional challenges. As to the Roberts case, that is currently in the federal district court. Currently that case is, my understanding, is pending, and I believe the courts are hoping that a change in our statutes will resolve that case.
Okay, but I mean, if that was the case, if the state of Hawaii already bans electric guns, and the district court, the federal district court, is looking for some type of guidance from us, if the state wanted to choose to continue the ban, we could. But in this situation, I think it's just confusing because you hear some of these the opponents who are saying, well, why are you doing away with the ban and then providing all these regulations? The fact of the matter is that there are certain people who still want to ban electric guns. And so now this bill seems to be the next offshoot, which is now trying to regulate it so heavily that it's essentially the same thing as a ban. So the question now I have for you is Roberts versus Ballard, where is it right now? When do we expect a judgment in that case?
As like I said, my understanding is that case currently is pending. There is no trial date set in that matter.
But isn't it just it's a declaratory action, isn't it? It's a deck action, isn't it?
I believe that is correct.
Okay, so it's a deck action and injunction to invalidate Hawaii's electric gun ban. So essentially what the proponents of that measure, I guess Roberts is essentially trying to start to argue that our ban is unconstitutional under Cayetano versus Massachusetts.
And if the state were to go forward with a statute that creates a regulatory scheme, that would change.
But regardless, let's say we didn't pass anything, Ms. Murakami. Let's say this bill just died as it is right now. The deck action would still go through, and if our law was unconstitutional, it would still be unconstitutional regardless if we had a regulatory scheme in place.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Har. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item. HB 446 relating to motor vehicles. This would establish a new offense of theft of a catalytic converter, as well as require different record keeping requirements on those who buy and purchase catalytic converters. We have our first testifier. Actually, our only testifiers indicated that they will be here to testify. In support, we have Tim Dayton from Geico.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson. Tim Dayton, General Manager for Geico. As I show in my testimony, we're in support because this is a growing phenomenon. It's real easy to steal these things, and then they're sold to people for a very small amount, but they're so easy to steal. So we're looking at this as something that's going to skyrocket, and the suggestions in this bill and the companion bill that you're going to hear next would require common sense bookkeeping and measures. And it looks like all testify today is in support. So, and urge the committee to pass it.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us today. Members, please note we also have additional supportive testimony and comments from individuals and businesses and associations who have indicated that they won't be present. Seeing that, members, any questions for Geico? Okay. If, okay. Seeing no questions, then we will move on to our next agenda item. Something similar, but in different statutes, HB 117 relating to scrap dealers. And this also attacks catalytic converters and the problems we're having with theft, but in terms of scrap dealers and regulations on them. For HB 117, we have Mr. Dayton again from Geico in support.
Nothing further to add, Chair.
Thank you. We also have supportive testimony from individuals and organizations who have indicated they will not be here in support of this measure. Members, any questions on HB 117? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item. HB 60 relating to non-general funds. This would abolish and reclassify various non-general funds related to DCCA. First, we have Jay Griffin from the Public Utilities Commission offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Just very quickly, we've asked to, we've offered some language, I believe, to you to reclassify our appropriation here. The program that was set up 2 years ago, is, in our opinion, has been a very good success. About a little over a quarter of it has already been paid out in rebates, and 36 projects for EV chargers have been supported. Almost half is now have received applications, and those projects are pending. It's another 46. So we want to do what we can to continue the program and support it. And so we ask for your support on the recommended changes to the language here. Thank you, and available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Dean Hazama from the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson and Vice Chair Kitagawa and members of the committee. DCC agrees with HB 60 with the exception of we do not concur with the auditor's recommendation to convert the insurance, education, and commissioner's fund to a trust fund, to a special fund vice the trust fund that is currently it is. I have no other testimony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We also have comments from Tom Yamachika, Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair and members. Tom Yamachika from the Tax
Tom, we're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Is this better, sir? Hello?
It's still very faint. I can barely hear. I can make out what you're saying, but I'm not sure if everybody else can.
Okay, well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify. We did submit written comments, and we'll stand on those and will be available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have June Chi from Hawaiian Electric offering comments. Okay, I'm told she is not here with us in the Zoom room. We also, members, please note, have testimony provided in opposition. With that, let's open it up to questions. Members, any questions on HB 60? Okay, I'm seeing none. Actually, I have a question for DCCA. Dean, you still with us?
Yes, Chair, I'm still here.
Okay, thank you. The main point of contention for DCCA and in some of the other testimonies seems to be on section 2, I believe, with the Commissioner's Training and Education Fund. And I just wanted to ask if you could clarify for the committee, to what extent or level is this activity occurring, whether it's the training, the education, the equipping of staff and personnel, or the education of the general public?
Yeah, Chair, it's we're trying the best we can right now, but due to the COVID pandemic, obviously a lot of these expenditures from this trust fund were being used for training and professional development of the insurance staff that were actually off-island events. So obviously we are not able to send people to those now. We're trying to participate virtually where we can, but the expenditures we haven't been able to really utilize the full ceiling for this fund due to the pandemic.
Okay. In a non-pandemic year, though, since the pandemic is kind of an aberration, what would you say is the level of activity for professional development or equipping or education of the public?
Yeah, we typically, the ceiling, the authorization for this trust fund is $200,000 a year, and we typically will spend maybe up to 100,000 or maybe a little bit more than that. But the insurance commissioner has indicated to us that prior to the pandemic, he was actually going to increase training efforts for his staff as well. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate the clarification.
Sure.
Members, any other questions before we move on? Okay. Seeing none, then we'll move on to HB 65 relating to taxation. This would require tax clearances for professional or vocational licenses in order for them to be issued or renewed. We have our first testifier and our old friend, Department of Taxation Director Isaac Choi, in support.
Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, Titin Sakata on behalf of Director Choi. We stand on our testimony in support of the bill and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Alani Kyogi from DCCA Professional Vocational Licensing Division.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department will stand on its written comments. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have Tom Yamachika again with the the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. Excuse me.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We did submit written testimony. We have some concerns that at present, the Department of Taxation normally processes maybe 10,000 clearances per year. And you're talking about, in this bill, requiring tax clearances for 160,000 vocational or professional licensees. So that would increase the department's workload exponentially. I don't know if they can handle it without significant commitment of additional resources. If not, there will be, lots of delays and lots of people who need licenses to continue but can't get them to continue. I'd be happy to answer questions. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next, we have individual testimony from Peter Fritz in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. I'll stand on my written testimony, but I'd also like to add that it might be possible for the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs and the Department of Taxation to get together to decide how to stagger this and move this in. But all the licenses don't become due at the same time. Some are renewed for more than 1 year. And this is just a way, as I said in my testimony, to provide some fairness. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, that's all the testimony we have offered on HB 65. Anyone wishing to ask questions? Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to DOTAX. I'd like to know the status of issuing these tax clearances in a timely manner, because I have heard complaints about that also.
Representative Morikawa, we request that provision be inserted to allow the department to enter into an agreement with DCCA so that we can provide tax clearance requests and responses be performed electronically and also in bulk. It will be something similar to how we participate in the Hawaii Compliance Express. So it would the data would be provided to DCCA in bulk.
Thank
so
you.
The Hawaii Compliance Express, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions on HB 65? Okay, seeing none, then we will move on to our next agenda item, HB 269, excuse me, 296, relating to leaf blowers. Members, I'll note that we have multiple individual testimonies proffered in support, but no one indicating they will be present. Is that correct? Okay, so no one is in our Zoom room to ask questions of, unfortunately. But since no one is here, just so that this bill gets its due, this bill would change the hours and impose a decibel requirement on leaf blowers in special improvement districts. Some of them include the Authors District of Waikiki. With that, then we will move on to our next item, HB 448. This is relating to violation of privacy. This would add a criminal penalty for using a drone or an unmanned aircraft for violations of privacy. Let's see. We have our first testifier, the Honolulu Police Department, Randall Platt, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Randall Platt, Captain with the Honolulu Police Department. We stand on our written testimony in support of House Bill 448, and I'll be available for any questions.
Thank you. Let's see. Next, we have Mark Tom from the Honolulu Prosecutor's Office in support. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Vice Chair. It was moving on to a different bill. HPD is our only testifier that is present on HB 448. Members, any questions on HB 448?
Chair.
Yes,
sorry,
Representative Morikawa.
I didn't see that testimony. I don't know if I'm missing something.
Oh, I'm sorry, members. It came in late. I believe it came in around the 1 p.m. mark.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Apologies. Any other questions, members? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to HB 571. This is relating to childlike sex dolls. This would establish the felony offense of importation, sale, or possession of a childlike sex doll. This is proffered by our Legislative Women's Caucus. We have our first testifier indicating that they'll be present, Mark Tom from the Honolulu Prosecutor's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Deputy Prosecutor Tricia Nakamatsu, appearing on behalf of the Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, Honolulu. I apologize. We had some technical difficulties. We're also supposed to appear earlier on HB 891 electric guns, but we just couldn't. Technology. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Just nothing to add, really. Standing on our written testimony in support of the bill on childlike sex dolls prohibition. Available for questions, if any.
Thank you. We also have late testimony proffered from the Honolulu Police Department. Randall Platt.
Chair, we also stand on our written testimony, and I'll be available for comments.
Thank you. In support.
In support, yes, sir.
Thank you. That's all the testimony proffered by individuals indicating they will be here at the hearing. Members, any questions? Okay. Seeing none, then we will move on to our last agenda item. HB 233 relating to massage therapists. This would impose a continuing education requirement for renewal or for license renewal on massage therapists. We have our first testifier, Rise Doi from DCCA.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Rise Doi, Executive Officer for the Board of Massage Therapy. We'll stand on our written testimony in support, noting that we request the implementation date be changed to July 1st, 2024, to provide ample notice to affected licensees of the continuing education requirement. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have testimony offered in support by Olivia Nagashima from the American Massage Therapy Association, Hawaii chapter.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the House Committee on Consumer Protection and Commerce. My name is Olivia Nagashima. I am the president of the American Massage Therapy Association Hawaii chapter, and I would like to stand on my written testimony and be available for comment or questions for you.
Thank you very much. Members, that's all the testimony. We have other testimony offered in support, but indicating that they will not be present. Any questions, members? Okay, seeing none, we'll recess for decision making. Recess. Okay, reconvening our 2 p.m. agenda of the Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee this Thursday, February 4th. Thank you, members, and thank you for your questions and the discussion we had. As you can see, I am learning the Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee's topics are very broad, so never a dull moment. First off, on HB 891, I think we've had some really good discussion relating to electric guns. I think there are issues with this bill, and I think some of the opposition made some very good points that it's overly broad. I do worry, though, about having no regulatory scheme and going from what is basically an outright ban to sort of nothing at all, regulating something that may have potential harmful impact on some consumers depending on the way it's used. So the recommendation on HB 891 is to move the bill out with amendments, and the simple amendment would be for now to defect the date to January 1, 2050. And for those watching who may not necessarily be familiar with legislative tactics, defecting the date ensures that we have to have continued discussion on this, and especially for those who proffered good testimony in opposition, because this bill has a triple referral, you'll also be able to have your say as well in the Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Committee, which this bill will likely move to next. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation on HB 891 to pass with amendments?
Chair.
Representative Har.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for the recommendation. And I think it behooves, this committee to really look at going from a complete ban to having no regulation. So I agree with the chair that we do have to be cautious. That said, I don't think the testimony, with all due respect to the Attorney General's office, regarding the Roberts v. Ballard deck action and injunction, it doesn't really make sense that they're waiting for us to take action. Regardless, if it's unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. So I do appreciate very much the chair's recommendation, but I think this is a disincentive. We've seen what's been happening on the mainland with Black Lives Matter. I think that many of the opponents, have just said, instead of using firearms, they could have used a taser. So I'm not saying we shouldn't regulate, but I think the regulations here go completely so far to almost disincentivize people. And again, many of the opponents of this bill have basically said, it's almost a safer route versus a firearm. So for those reasons, respectfully, Chair, I'll be voting with reservations.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair Kitagawa for the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HB 891 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Aquino. Representative Har.
Reservations, please.
Representative Hashem. Representative Kong.
No vote, please.
Representative Mizuno. Representative Morikawa. Representative Onishi.
Aye.
Representative Tarnas.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto.
Reservations.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next, moving on to HB 446 relating to motor vehicles. I think what Geico has said has made a lot of sense, and there was great testimony proffered here. So I will be taking Geico's suggestion and combining the relevant contents of HB 117, including it into HB 446 because they're related in subject matter. And what HB 117 includes in terms of subject matter that HB 446 does not, I think are very good definitions as well as amendments pertaining to scrap dealers. And considering that this is a growing issue and problem for many consumers, I think it's good for our committee to be tackling this. In addition, I will also be inserting a defective date of January 1, 2050. So again, including some of the major provisions of HB 117 into HB 446s and including keeping their existing content so that we have a more comprehensive approach to theft of catalytic converters. Members, any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HB 446 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye, noting the presence of all committee members. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. And HB 117, we will be deferring that as much of its contents will now be in HB 446. Next, HB 60 relating to non-general funds. I think we also had good discussion here because I'm persuaded by DCCA that some of the funds are being used and it should perhaps remain a trust fund as opposed to a special fund. We're going to delete section 2 of the bill since that's the only one that has some disagreement today. Yes, so the status quo will remain there. I also appreciate the PUC's amendment with regard to section 4 or suggested amendment. I will say I think because it's an appropriation and ceiling language, I would feel more comfortable deferring to the Finance Committee to make that specific action in the bill. But we will note it in the committee report to flag it for finance of your request for a ceiling increase and commensurate appropriation. Technical and non-substantive amendments, as well as the inserting of a defective date of January 1, 2050. Members, any comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, Vice Chair.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HB 60 with amendments, noting the presence of all members. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next, HB 65 relating to taxation. I think this bill is one of the more novel discussions to be having, and certainly a legitimate one necessitated by our current budget situation. I'm persuaded that if the Department of Taxation feels like it can do it, that we should give them a try to ensure greater tax compliance. And it seems reasonable to me that that should also be attached to the renewal of professional and vocational licenses, since these folks are professionals. I'd like to take DOE taxes amendments, which just for review for our committee members and the general public watching would be to use authenticated versus signed certificates in terms of language, comporting with that it's not necessarily a wet signature as they mentioned in their testimony. I'd also like to take up DOE taxes amendment on deleting the not subject to income in Hawaii and replace it with their suggested language. DOE taxes amendment also adding language, and we heard this in the question and answer period, allowing DCCA and DOE tax to perform clearance requests electronically and to collaborate with each other. Technical and non-substantive amendments, as well as a defective date of January 1, 2050. Members, any comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, Vice Chair.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HB 65 with amendments, noting the presence of all members. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, HB 296 relating to leaf blowers. I think this is an interesting discussion that I'd like to keep moving. I would like to pass this bill with several amendments. The first being to make it specific, kind of as a pilot to the Waikiki Special Improvement District. I would also like to increase the permissible hours to use a leaf blower to 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sunday and weekends. Right now in the bill, both of those terminate at 4 p.m. with permissible times to use it. I think that might be a little too drastic. I also think the bill mentions 60 decibels as an acceptable level of noise, but as that's normal conversation according to the CDC. The CDC notes that the typical leaf blower emits about 80 decibels in terms of noise. So we're going to change 60 decibels in the bill to 80 decibels and insert a defective date of January 1, 2050. Members, any comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, Vice Chair.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HB 296 with amendments, noting the presence of all committee members. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next on HB 448 relating to violation of privacy. Undoubtedly, this is an issue I think we're going to need to continue to explore, this nexus of burgeoning technology and its proliferation in society and how it affects privacy. So I have no doubt that this is going to continue to need exploration. I did speak with the author. I think this bill could potentially ensnare legitimate commercial activities, whether it's by utilities or realtors or sales fulfillment companies like Amazon. And since I think it's overly broad at the present moment, my recommendation will be to defer and continue to hone this to ensure that it is a little bit tighter next session. So HB 448, defer. HB 571 relating to childlike sex dolls. I'd like to move this Women's Legislative Caucus bill out with two amendments. One would be changing the language from below the age of puberty in reference to the doll to below the age of 18. I think that helps include all minors and helps keep all minors safe. I'd also like to insert a defective date of January 1, 2050. Members, any comments or questions? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, Vice Chair.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HB 571 with amendments noting the presence of all committee members. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And lastly, members, HB 223 relating to massage therapists. I'd like to pass this with one amendment, which would be to insert a defective date of January 1, 2050, but also note in the committee report DCCA's or concern and hope for an even more delayed effective date beyond 2022. And I think that's to give the usual licensing and renewal period more than just half of it to be able to comport with sort of these new continuing education requirements. So we'll put that in the committee report. And that's something we'll need to hammer out if this goes to conference. Members, any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass HB 223 with amendments noting the presence of all members. Any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you to the members of the public for their patience in joining us in this new 21st century frontier of Zoom hearings, and thank you to our members for being here today. With that, this committee meeting is adjourned.